Hi everybody, welcome to my channel, Life, Law, Bin. Hi everyone, I hope all is well. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm especially excited because I have Ayanna Nelson with me. She's a barrister at 7BR Barristers Chambers, and she's a cricket fanatic. She is a West Indies fan, a big fan of the West Indies. And today we're just going to talk a bit about her journey into law. And she has an interesting one, a blend between practicing in Grenada and currently practicing in the UK. Ayanna, thank you very much for joining us. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Nia. Thank you for having me.
So let's just jump straight into it. Can you start with your LLB journey? So can you identify for us where you studied and give us a brief overview of that experience?
Okay, I did my LLB at King's College in London, and it was I did what's called the Double Maîtrise program, which was a double degree, so English law and French law. So we did the first 2 years were at King's, and we did the 3-year LLB program condensed into 2 years. And then for the second the last 2 years, I was at the Sorbonne University in Paris, and we did effectively a 4-year degree condensed into 2 years. So I have two law degrees. I have an LLB in English and French law, and I have what's called a maîtrise en droit. So it's effectively a master's in law in French law. So it was pretty intense, I won't lie. It was very intense. We had, especially in Paris, we had classes every day, well, Monday to Saturday. Some classes started at 7 o'clock in the evening and finished at 9. So it was intense. But I think it was worthwhile because I got two for the price of one. But a lot of sweat and blood and tears went into that.
I can imagine, Ayanna, because it really has caught me by surprise because I've heard quite a few different people talking about their LLB journeys and never heard about, this two for the price of one. And that's interesting. You walked away with knowledge in English law and French law. So does that mean you can speak a bit of French for us then? You know a bit of French.
I can speak French. Whether I speak for you is another issue. But yeah, no, I spoke French before. I spoke French before. I was very good at French. I picked up French quickly, and I started learning French in primary school, and then I learned it very quickly. So I did it for GCSE, A level, and then between finishing my A levels and going to university, I spent a year. Well, I spent 6 months working at Disneyland in Paris. And in that 6 months, I became fully fluent as a result of that. So by the time I started university, I was perfectly fluent in French, which was good because it was one less thing to worry about. And I think a lot of the students on the course were either fully bilingual or French. Some of them had like a British parent and a French parent or something like that. And half of the cohort, there were 40 of us in total, half of them were from France. So it was almost like we did a swap. So they did their first 2 years in England as well, and then went back to France. And we did the first 2 years in England and then went over to France. So we were fully blended. So it was good. But speaking French was definitely helped because, like I say, it was one less thing to worry about. And the classes in France it was tough. Their method of teaching is very, very different. And the method of, for example, writing essays and so on is very, very different as well. So that was one of the things that they taught us while we were in England. So we had to learn to write essays in the French style. And sort of we had preparatory classes, so preparatory classes in French legal system and French educational system, so that you could kind of had an idea what to expect when you got there. It didn't really help. It was a huge shock. It was a huge shock to the system. just getting used to what was expected of you. And it's very much, the method of learning is very, very different. So it was tough. It was really, really tough, but I survived. I'm very grateful for that. Would I do it again? I don't know, because realistically, it hasn't, I mean, it doesn't impact upon my day-to-day life now or my practice. But I made some very good friends while I was in Paris, and friends from the course. So for that, I'm grateful. And if only to meet those people again, then I would do it again.
And it's always an asset as well to speak more than one language. So that's quite helpful. Does that mean though that it would be even easier for you if you wanted to take up practice in France for you to do that because you're fluent and you also have that certification? Would that make it easier for you to do that?
It would make it easier, yeah, to be called to the French or to the bar in Paris or wherever, because yeah, you have to have it's actually more difficult to become, I think, to qualify in France, because you have to have about 6 years worth of university studies to be able to practice. So I have effectively 4, even though I only did it in 2 years, but my certificate, my degree says I have a 4-year course of study. So I probably need to do another 2 years before I could qualify to practice if I wanted to, which I don't. But you know, the option is there if I wanted to. But one way I'll say it has helped is that because from a very early stage I was working in, well, my mind had been trained to work in 2 jurisdictions. So I had to learn the English legal system and English law, and then the French legal system and French law, which are very, very different. The English system obviously is a common law system. In France, they use a civil law system where the law is codified. And so the way in which you interpret the law is very different. So you have to learn that. I actually think it's probably an easier method, or it's an easier system to learn or understand. But because I had to do that, so my mind was already working in a sort of multi-jurisdictional way, which helped when I came then to work in Grenada and throw in a third jurisdiction into the mix. But it did mean that at one stage I had all of these different laws in my mind and thinking, okay, which is the one, which is the applicable one now. But it's definitely a good discipline, and as a lawyer, certainly it helps you to see a bigger picture, I think.
So you've just given us an overview of your educational experience in the UK and in France. So I think the burning question now is where in the globe did you decide to do law school? And what was your experience of it?
Okay, I did the bar course. It was the BVC at the time, bar vocational course in London. I always wanted to be a barrister since ever, so that was kind of a no-brainer for me. And at the time, I was focused on practicing it at the English bar. So I did the bar course. I was very fortunate. I got a scholarship from Gray's Inn, which enabled me to be able to pay the course fees, which were high then and higher now, I believe. So I did the bar course at BPP in London. I have to say I loved it. I genuinely, and it's very rare you hear people say that they love the bar course. I did. I loved it way more than my 4 years at university. And I think probably because, again, the approach was very different. I'm not particularly academic, I think. I'm a much more practical minded person. And so I liked it because the course was a practical course. So you're being taught how to, how to be a barrister as opposed to just be an academic lawyer. And for me, that was everything I'd always wanted. So the opportunity to stand up on my feet and, do whether a plea in mitigation or whatever it was, for me, that was as close to being a barrister as I'd ever been. And I absolutely loved it. It was hard work. There were long hours. I remember we were told, I think the first week, in bar school, and they said to us, look, you need to approach this like a job, because this is what being in practice is going to be like. And in a way, I wish I'd taken that approach to university as well. It might have been a bit different, but it was, I did from the very beginning. I approached it like a job, and I would be there 8 o'clock in the morning, and I would often leave there. Well, I used to leave, in fact, when it closed at 11 at night. And I became very on first name terms with security, because they would come around and say, Anne, it's time to go. But I was there every day, 5 days a week, all day. And so I put a lot of work into it, because I felt at that step, by then it was a privileged position for me. I don't come from a background of lawyers or professionals generally. So, I was the first person in my family to go to university, and then to move on to the second stage was a huge thing for me. So there was no way I was going to mess it up. I was putting everything into this. I wanted to be a barrister, and I was going to be a barrister come hell or high water. So everything went into that. And I loved it. I genuinely did. I really, really did. And I made, some amazing friends along the way who 12 years later I'm still close with, which is amazing. And I didn't at the time imagine that that would have been the case, but it is. So all in all, it was a good time.
And one thing is a constant. Bar school is hard. It's long, it's grueling. And I smiled when you said what your tutor told you in the first week. That was the exact same thing we were told.
Really.
Yeah, last year when I began. My course is coming to an end now. But she said, quite frankly, although you may only have contact time for 2 days within this week, more than likely you have to work every single day like this is a job. And she was basically saying a 9 to 5. And the truth is, I feel like it doesn't stop. It never stops. So it's not even Monday to Friday. And then I say, oh, it's the weekend. I get to relax. No, I'm always doing work. After this recording, I'm back doing work again. And that's how it is. And it's really, I'd say it's really Sunday to Sunday, really, really, that you're doing work.
Yeah.
And it's really just a few hours off in the day to try to clear your mind. But it's never really, to me, 24 hours you get off completely.
But the reality is, Nia, that is life in practice. It's exactly like that. And I didn't at the time. I thought, well, are they really? Is this really how it is? But I guarantee you, unfortunately, it does not get better. So
No.
it is. That is your life, and it's good discipline to have instilled at early stage, because it really does help you. If you can crack that at that stage, the rest, it will become natural. It won't be as grueling as it could otherwise have been. So it's good that you develop that discipline at that stage.
Yeah. I'm also wondering to myself, how was your well-being? How do you strike that work and recreational time balance? How do you get that done?
I think it's not something that you figure out straight away. It does definitely take a while. And for me, somebody actually had to sit me down and explain to me how to do it. And what I do now is I look at the beginning of every year, I take like the calendar, and I figure out when am I going to take breaks. So I will book in at, let's say, at least a week, but preferably 2, or if I can get 3 or longer, then great. And I say, this is when I'm going to take a break, and trying to do it at least once a quarter. So at least 1 week every quarter that you take as holiday. And since I started doing that, my life has changed so much for the better. It's so much better. You don't have to go anywhere. It's COVID, so you don't really have a choice, but you don't have to go anywhere or do anything. Just have a week where you are not working. And it's really important to actually not work. Like the first few times I was doing it, the temptation would creep in, and you get something, or your clients would say, oh, this is a really good, and it's like, and then you do it, and then afterwards you regret it. So I've made sure now that I will pencil in or make it concrete, this is when I'm doing it. And the best thing is to actually book a trip away, even if it's a year away, but then, because then you can't do any, and it becomes more difficult and complicated as you get more senior and your work becomes less, well, more fluid, let's say. So it can get complicated. And thankfully, fingers crossed, so far, I've never had to cancel a trip, but I have come close. So, but just try and block out time for yourself. And even if it's just a day that you're not doing work, you're not doing, you know, anything other than what you want to do. And that might just be watching Netflix for the day. I would gladly sit down and watch Netflix for 3 days in a row. That's like heaven. But something for yourself does not work. That's important.
Favorite series, watching your favorite series and give me some good food. Ooh, heaven.
Good food that you don't have to cook is better too.
You're speaking my language here. You're speaking my language. That's very helpful though, because generally people give very generic well-being advice, and I think it's because we all do struggle to figure out, okay, where should I kind of switch off? Because as you just rightfully pointed out, you're always tempted. Your mind is always going, even when you go to bed at night, you're thinking about what needs to be done the next day. Or you're thinking to yourself, yes, I was productive, but crap, there's still this thing that I need to finish. So I think that was very, very practical advice. I'm certainly going to use it for myself in terms of blocking out time. That's very helpful. Now I know that you're Grenadian, and I know that you would have practiced in Grenada for a bit, and I feel it's only befitting for you to describe your experience practicing in Grenada first, and then you can give us some kind of comparative analysis between practicing at home and practicing in the UK.
Okay, I practiced in Grenada for just under 5 years, and it was right at the beginning of my career. So after I did the bar course in London, I moved to Grenada about 6 months after I'd finished. At the time, it wasn't initially planned. I won't lie, that wasn't part of the plan. It was born of circumstances, let's say. I had a year. I'd applied for pupillage. I was a runner-up, well, a reserve for a pupillage place, but the person they offered it to accepted, so that was the end of me. And it was tough. It was, I won't lie, it was tough just getting it. It was a very generic email saying rejected after you got so close. So I had a year to fill, and I was offered the opportunity to come and practice here for a while. So I said, yes, why not? It was a no-brainer at that stage. So in my mind, I was going for a year or so to try and get, to get some experience, advocacy experience in particular. And then I would come back and I would apply for pupillage again and hopefully get pupillage the next year. It didn't quite work out like that because I came and I realized that I loved it, and I was practicing. I was an attorney. I was in court every day, and that's what I wanted. And I couldn't see any reason to leave at that point. So what was supposed to be 9 months to a year ended up as 5. But it was great. I practiced as initially I started off in a civil firm, just doing civil litigation, commercial litigation. And then I realized that the part of me that had wanted to do crime was crying out quite loudly. So I moved to a different firm where I had a balance. So it was probably about 50-50 in terms of crime and civil. The good thing was that I was, from a very early stage, exposed to big cases, big litigation. I was working, I was led by my boss in a murder case quite early on. And he gave me opportunity to cross-examine some witnesses, minor witnesses, but witnesses nonetheless. I was, cross-examining witnesses in a murder trial, which you wait years to be able to do in the UK. So it was huge. And I was in court every day. Sometimes I'd be in 3 or 4 courts in the same day. So I was getting a huge amount of advocacy experience, and I loved it. And, you know, Grenada is home. So for that reason alone, I felt I was at home. I was happy. I've got a lot of family here, a lot of friends here. So it was great. I was, as the young people say, I was living my best life. I truly was. Um, you know, there's days you have a long day at work. I remember one day my friend sent me, it was BBM those days. She messaged me on BBM and she said, "Oh, what are you doing after work?" I was like, "No, what are you doing?" I was like, "I'm at work." She said, "Do you want to go sailing?" Like, okay, I thought she meant at the weekend. She says, "Okay, meet me at the marina in 15 minutes. I was like, what? Literally 20 minutes later, I was sitting on a yacht drinking a beer. And at that point, I realized, I was like, okay, yeah, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And it was great. It was great. You know, I was lucky in that, well, I worked hard. I worked very hard. And so I was able to build a good reputation for myself. I became involved with the Grenada Bar Association. And so the first year I was elected to the association committee, executive committee, and I was just a committee member, council member. The following year, I was elected as the secretary of the Bar Association, and I served for 2 terms as secretary, which was great. You know, it was a lot of responsibility, and I was relatively junior at the time, but I had a lot of responsibility, and you know, I thrived on that. I represented the Grenada Bar Association at the annual Council of Legal Education conference, and that was in the Bahamas, and it was, you know, attended by attorneys general and presidents of all of the bar associations throughout the Caribbean region. And there was me. It was great. I mean, it was at Atlantis as well in Bahamas, so that was great, a great experience. But you know, I got to travel a lot. I got to meet a lot of people throughout the Eastern Caribbean jurisdictions, which was amazing. And you know, you forge links with people that have endured to this day. So it was really, really good experience. But also to be able to, you know, work for the Grenada Bar generally, but also Grenadian Public. We did a lot of work on with public legal education. We have like an annual law week and trying to help the local population with legal issues that they have, or students. We organize moots and that sort of thing. So it was great. It was, you know, I thoroughly enjoyed my 5 years here. And again, I made connections and friendships with other attorneys that continue to this day.
Sounds like a wealth of experience. So you